Did I just condense queer identity to Western individualism? Do you realise how ignorant and harmful that is? Well, here's an inconvenient truth. Queer identity is a subset of identity politics, which is a product of individualistic liberalism. Identifying with your inner self is a remarkably new concept. Let me explain. Firstly, I think why this is so hard for so many to understand is because we all see the world, understand history and ideas like freedom through a fundamentally liberal and Marxist lens. Let's just think about how we learn and think about history. We see it as a timeline of the struggle of the oppressed, which under traditional Marxism would be the struggle of the peasant and the proletariat against the nobles and bourgeoisie, and more recently with neo-Marxism, we see history through the struggle of the perceived oppressed, like women, queer people, people of colour, all under an intersectional umbrella. We need to understand that this is not typical. We thrust this modern ideology upon historical societies and assume that history was a journey of oppressed people trying to actualize their inner selves, to turn their inner feelings into the wings of rebellion and break the yoke of thy heart. In reality, however, generally the idea of the inner self didn't really exist historically, and it's a product of our modern liberal societies. In non-liberal societies, people were told where they belonged in society, their purpose in life, and the way of achieving goodness and virtue was determined by this. For example, if you're a woman in Sparta, your role in society was to give birth and raise strong Spartan warriors, and how you achieved virtue and goodness was how well you did this. If you became disillusioned and unhappy, you were probably told by your village elders that you had strayed from your preordained role in society that you were given, and all of this fed into the idea of the collective good, which on a more basic level in a world where mere living and surviving was a struggle, it was the way most human societies orientated and self-optimized for survival. As you can see, there was no room, no conceptual framework to see yourself as anything outside your given place in society. Where this change was down to the emergence of liberal ideas during the European Enlightenment. Martin Luther is the person who people often refer to as the first to separate the outer and the inner self. When he began the Protestant Reformation by infamously nailing his thesis to the Wittenberg church door, he started an intellectual revolution, or contagion depending on your point of view. He started the idea that our inner religious identity and faith can be different and independent from the Catholic one that was forced upon us by society. From there, liberalism, where your inner identity took precedence over your society's expectations, took root. We saw Romanticism take over the artistic world, where there was a new focus on inner feelings, and politically we saw people like John Locke refute the divine rights of kings, arguing that people were endowed with natural rights to life, liberty and property. This was new, and as the idea of individuals having natural rights took hold in Western Europe and especially in America, it provided the conceptual framework, and by the time societies became unfathomably wealthy and decadent and easy contraception became a reality, it provided the foundations for a sexual revolutions in the 1960s and 70s. People for the first time in history could not only fulfill their sexual desires outside the heterosexual norms, but also identify as and make their whole sense of being around their inner sexual urges and tendencies. This is queer identity, and I hope you can see that there's a huge difference between people feeling homosexual urges and people identifying with it, and queer identity is clearly a result of hundreds of years of liberalism and Western individualism, and the reason why we are seeing LGBT identifying people emerging in non-Western cultures is because of the spread of these ideas through practices like colonization. And furthermore, the reason why we are seeing so much queerness throughout history and throughout the world is because we are studying history and societies through a modern queer lens. Is this fact inconvenient to those wanting to propagate the idea that queer identity has been around since time immemorial, and it's only because of the patriarchal West and colonization that it's been oppressed? Well, yes, but I'm more in favour of telling the truth, no matter how inconvenient. Hope that makes sense, and thanks for watching.